How are you doing, green industry business leaders? This is episode number 31 of the Green Industry Profits Podcast, where we talk about how green industry companies can grow in a profitable way. In today's episode, we had a conversation with Joshua Gillow of Yes Express and Sales Made Simple podcast. Joshua shared his journey of building a successful landscaping company, emphasizing the importance of defining success, maintaining discipline, and focusing on personal growth. He discussed his company's business model, which involves delegation, empowerment, and building long-term relationships with partners and clients. Joshua also highlighted the significance of effective communication skills in sales, the value of understanding clients' needs, and the importance of consistently striving for personal improvement rather than competing with others. And before we dive into this episode, just a quick note that this podcast is brought to you by Cycle CPA, a remote accounting firm that works specifically with green industry businesses. For more information, go to cyclecpa.com. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Hey, everybody. We got an exciting guest here today, Joshua Gillow, and he's with Yes Express, also with the Sales Made Simple podcast. And we're going to talk about a subject here today, a couple different subjects, I would say, but one of them that I think companies don't focus enough on, which one being sales. But Joshua, thanks a lot for joining us here.
No, I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you for having me on. And I really hope today that your listeners are buckled up. I think we're going to be dropping some great content, some great value. Hopefully they can push past some of those sales obstacles they keep hitting and the no's that they keep getting. I've got a lot of options for that. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Good stuff. And I think we had met virtually before, but and then even in person at I think it was the Techo Block event over in Jersey
Mhm. Mhm.
a couple of years back. But I think one thing, definitely love the energy that you bring, Joshua. I think it's phenomenal stuff. So, but I guess before we dive into a lot of those items, I guess if you don't mind just giving us a little overview of how you started your company and maybe starting with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably be one of the most unlikely success stories when it comes to business in general. Been at this about 30 years now, and it's been ups and downs, roller coasters. Managed lots of, great boom markets and great bust markets, and somehow, some way, we've always made it through. And what I've found over the years is the more the more we get into challenges, the more it forces our minds open to new opportunities and new options. We can get really complacent, right, Joe? We can get really complacent with just doing things like we've always done. And if we don't need systems because we're making money, that's fine. And all of a sudden you start to grow close to that $1 million mark and you realize we need to get professionals in here. We need systems. We're stuck. We don't know where to go next. I've never built a business past this line before. And I always say the first $1 million is the hardest. And they're definitely right with that because it's not the hardest to do. It's the hardest to manage your mind to, right? Because it's this constant ebb and flow inside, this constant struggle, this constant conflict inside of, do I have what it takes? Am I really going to be able to do this? Am I more scared of success or failure, right? There's all of these things that go on in our brains as we start to grow and grow and grow our business. And I see a lot of guys and gals out there running outdoor living companies, and you know, I don't know if they've actually defined what success means. Success can mean something different for everybody. For one person, it could be a steady income that they can buy groceries and keep a roof over their family's heads and just have enough to get by. And that's perfectly fine. And that's success. And for others, they want to be the biggest and the best and do, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And there's no right or wrong answer to that. It really is a matter of being very clear in the beginning on how do you define success? If there's no
Yeah.
definition, it's kind of like blindfolding yourself and grabbing a bow and an arrow and trying to hit a target. If we're not clear on where we're going, how the heck are we ever going to get there? So, anyway, starting out in business, starting out my family's garden center at age 5, and learning from, if you will, the streets, even though it was cornfields, but learning from the streets, getting your licks out there, making good decisions, bad decisions, and growing, watching my family run a business, and then to then grab the reins and take off for myself. And it, again, over all the years, a lot of great choices, a lot of poor choices, but you live and learn, right? And that brought me to where I am now, and I'm very blessed for that.
That's awesome, Joshua. Now, if things get busy, right? Especially for landscape companies around this time of year, we're
Mhm.
well into the spring here. You had mentioned kind of what does success mean to someone, right? Because it might
Mhm.
mean different things. How does someone reevaluate that or just kind of think of that internally, especially when things start to get really busy and you might start to prioritize maybe the wrong things, right? How do you kind of get back to that main mission and, maybe I guess what kind of really drives that individual person?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joe. And so much of that is around D word, discipline, right? To be clear on what you want next, what you want in general. And even if you're not fully clear on it, like you don't know exactly like, hey, I want to buy that house in that city and when at that date, when I'm this old, when I have this much money, if it's not that clear, but at least know that you are each day moving toward a future that is full of love, joy, and fulfillment, peace, all of those things. That's really our target, right? When we get busy, the question really has to be laid on the table is, are we majoring in minor things?
Yeah,
Do we just have an addiction to being busy because we don't want to be dealing with our family or boredom or whatever it might be? The bigger question is to be, are you truly being honest with yourself? Or are you just staying busy for the sake of being busy? Or are you one of those guys like myself out there who for years stayed busy so I felt like I had a value? If I wasn't busy, what good am I? And that deducted itself all the way down to if I'm not busy, that means I'm not enough. People don't want my services. And if I'm not enough, am I worthy of love? I mean,
yeah.
that goes way down. All right. That's like level 5, 6, 7, 8. Like we just dropped in there quick, and that's a whole nother episode right there. But my point is that when you're thinking about success and trying to define it, it's taking the time. I said discipline, taking the time each day and thinking about what does that mean for you? And the cool part, listeners, is there's no wrong answers here. It can be anything. It could be as simple as having time at night to go watch your kids' t-ball game. That could be success. It could be not having to have alcohol when you get done with the end of the day and actually be able to sit down and spend time with your family present and not try to disconnect because of all the stress and overwhelm you over. That could be success.
Yeah,
Success could be getting married to the love of your life. Success could be moving to an island with palm trees. I mean, it really makes no difference. What does make a difference is that you have some path you're moving towards, something bigger than yourself that you're moving toward.
yeah,
And there's a lot we can talk about with that. But if as a business owner, you're running day after day, just trying to pay the bills and staying busy so that you look busy, so you can say, oh my God, I'm so stressed out. I'm so overwhelmed. This business thing. And like if that's what you think business is, then you were sold the wrong bill of goods. I did
yeah,
for most of my career. I thought that the busier I was, the more successful I was. And the problem is those two aren't always wired together. Oftentimes it's this illusion of being successful equals busy. I'm more successful now than I've ever been, and I have more time in my hands than I've ever had. I run
yeah,
9 different companies at this point, and I have more time to do things that I want. I have days off. I can do all kinds of stuff because in that discipline, it's a lot of reading that happens, a lot of personal growth that happens. Again, it doesn't just happen. You've got to be determined enough to go get it. And you start learning things and you start delegating things, and pretty soon you have teams that are far more capable than you ever were at doing the right stuff. Like you guys do accounting. That's the last thing I want to do, right? We hire people like yourself to say, Joe, manage this. Like I'll bring the money in, you count the beans. That's it. It's that simple. You make sure they're in the right buckets. You make sure that I'm as favorable on my tax situation as possible legally, and I'm going to go out there and serve people. And you just make sure that the back end's taken care of. And it's having that trust in professional partners and in relationships, having mentors in your life. All of those things require discipline and focus. And then in that realm, you can start thinking about what success truly means to you. But if you're stuck in the day to day, majoring in minor things like I used to, then you never have time to sit down and open up the bandwidth to actually start thinking about these bigger things. You watch your parents, they work until they're 65 or 70 and then they retire. It's like, do you want that? Maybe you do. Nothing wrong with that. Do you want to retire at 43 like I did? I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. There's no right or wrongs. What do you want? That's the big question. What do you want? What are you doing this for? Why are you waking up every morning and putting in, 100 hours a week? Is it just so you don't have to deal with reality? You don't have to deal with your family. You can stay busy in your job, or is it because you truly want to build something big that you can give to your kids? I mean, there's just so many different ways you can skin that success definition. But ultimately, that's your choice.
that's great stuff, Joshua. And I do want to circle back to that as well. But even before we do, can you give us a little overview of, your landscape company and how you kind of started with that and kind of what it's evolved to be today?
Absolutely. So I started at around age 18 when people were coming into the garden center and asking if we could, my brother's about 18 months younger than me, if we could install things. And I grew up in that garden center from age 5 to 18, and I didn't get paid a penny to work there. 7 days a week we would work. My friends would go on vacations or go out to concerts and all that stuff. And for us, it was work. It's just what it
Yeah.
was. And we didn't think twice about it. We were in the country. I mean, I'd work on, if I had time after that, I would go to a farm for an entire day and bale hay for $20. And I was happy about that, dude. Like that was life. And so when people came into the garden center and said, "Hey, will your sons, will they, to my father, will your sons build stuff? They've been building stuff their whole life. Will they come to my house and do stuff?" And I'll never forget the first time a client said, "Hey, I'll give you $1,000 a day to come out and work at my house." Now that include materials too, but still, $1,000 is a lot because I didn't have any money in my account. And I was like, "You tell me people have like $1,000 a day to spend for someone to come do stuff around their house? Like that was insane." Right. So it started out that way. And we went out and just started adding value and helping people out anywhere we could. And it was, cleaning up along the riverbank because the Delaware would flood every year, or not every year, but most years in between, New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So we go down and clean up some of those areas for the people who live along the edge. And we would go out and do cleanups. We would go out and pick up garbage. We'd go out and do anything when people were paying. I was like, this is amazing. Like we had a little, actually, it was a 250, a Ford F-250, and we just ran the wheels off of that thing, a wheelbarrow and shovels, and that was it. And we just did everything with our backs. And we did that. My brother, my father, and I, we did that for years until we started thinking like, there's something bigger here. Customers were coming in and asking for bigger things. And then it was not just, tear downs. It was more, hey, do you guys install patios? Well, I don't know how to do that. Let's go learn. Do you guys do this? Do you guys do that? Do you guys put in fish ponds? And back then they were a hot trend. It was like, yeah, let's go to a class and figure it out. And so anyway, we did that for 15 years and grew that company up and eventually left that company because of a disagreement with my brother and myself. And so I said, all right, there's got to be another way to do this. And that was a design build style company. And what I
Yeah.
do now with Master Plan is we do all design manage work. So I was looking at the business model and I said, there's got to be a better way because there's a couple of things I don't like about design build. One is that I've got to own all the trucks, which is a huge risk financially. You can appreciate this. I also have to have all the experience and all the talent in house. And well, in that case, some things I'm very strong on, and some things I'm really very weak on. Certain building processes, different things. Like for instance, we could do pavers like nobody's business, but when it came to doing a deck or a roof, couldn't do those. Like we just didn't have the manpower. I mean, we could technically do it, but we couldn't be profitable doing it. So I said, how can we make a better mousetrap? So I was watching the pool builders and the home builders, and they have design manage, right? That a lot of them will design in house, and then they'll manage all the labor to get it built. They'll bring their teams in and get it done. And so I said, let's try that in the landscaping world. And I had never seen anybody do that before. And I was like, well, let's see what happens. It's an experiment. And that was back in 2012, and we've been very successful and profitable every year since. So I love that model. It's minimum risk and maximum reward and result to our customer. So that's my story as far as this goes.
That's great, Joshua. So do you have so you handle the design or your team now? Do you have internal staff that actually perform the work, or you're saying you utilize more subcontractors for that side of things?
Yeah, so from the internal, the office side, my team of two run the company and director of operations, and I have a designer, project manager, and sales guy. So those two together in a year do 3 to 5 million in revenue. And I'm in that company probably 2 hours a week. So that's the beauty of delegation and empowerment. We have all open book. We're very open and transparent. We make decisions as a team. That's one thing that I've learned that the most successful companies are the ones that not just delegate responsibilities, but actually delegate a lot of the empowerment to their teams. And when you know somebody's really doing a great job, they can do a lot more than you think they can. And the problem with ownership is that in the beginning, I thought I had to be the smartest guy in the room and I had to have all the answers. And when I realized that was BS, old belief system, right? That I had to think that that was always what that was. I had to be the smartest guy in the room. Then I realized, man, imagine showing up as an owner, having some ideas about what we might do in the next step of a certain situation. But why don't we pull the team first? What do you guys think? They're boots on the ground. They see it a different way. And together we come up with the best solution. And that's been a really centering beautiful thing to do. And then the disbursement of the responsibility then gets taken off your shoulders as the owner. So our goal as owners is to make sure that we're looking out for the next iceberg, if you will, always standing on top, looking out and envisioning what's coming next, making sure the vision is kept, and to make sure we're trying to take these obstacles out of our team's way, not doing the work each week. It's important that we shift to that. That's my definition of success, is empowering a team to make a difference in the world.
That's awesome, Joshua. No, that's a a pretty neat business model. We have some clients that operate a similar way, and um, some like yourself too that almost have created a lifestyle business out of it,
Hmm.
which is phenomenal. Now, and I think a key part of running a company like that is finding the right subcontractors
Mm.
to work with. Now, over the time that you've run the company with that business model, have you had uh, a variety of different subs, or
Mm.
have you been able to find good ones? Or I guess even just interested to hear kind of what the vetting process is and what your experience overall is with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's the good, bad, and the ugly when it comes to that, right? Certain contractors are just out for money. They care about volume. They don't care about quality. They don't care about your customer. They're just here to get in and get out. And those aren't the kind of people that you want to partner with. I've been through that process and it doesn't work very well. Um, and then there's others that are very design focused that want to kind of do everything in house. And then they're like, oh, more projects from you, but they already kind of do a lot because we do all the management of the design, the client, the customer
Sure.
experience, the permits, the inspections. We manage the entire thing, right? And so some companies do that too. And so that's okay, but they don't always become great fits. The ideal fit for a design manage company is to find other partners, and we don't like to call them subcontractors. We'll use that here because people on the podcast will understand that, but
Okay.
or use that terminology. But to the world, outward facing to the client, they're always our specialists, our partners. That's how we've always communicated that, because you wouldn't go to your doctor and want a subcontractor. You'd want a specialist, right? You'd want somebody that's the kind of terminology that they would want to use that
Sure.
gives them more confidence. So with that, finding a good partnership, because that's what it is. If it's not win-win, it's not going to work. It's not going to work for long. Let's put it that way, right? So if you want to build a connection with another company, we have to be thinking 3, 5, 10 years. How are we going to be able to not coexist, but co-thrive through this, right? And if you're let's just say that you are um, a general contractor and you're thinking like, I just need to find the cheapest subs, mark them up as much as possible as the market will handle and sell that labor. That's great.
Right.
But you're going to be struggling constantly because the client's going to feel that relationship pretty obviously when they're not listening, the communication is not that great, whatever it might be with a subcontractor. But if you go into the situation where you're like, nope, our mindset is clear. Success to us in this situation, defining that early is a win-win. The subcontractor needs to make a fair living and we need to make a fair living, right? That's what it
Yeah.
is. And if one of those things isn't working, A, that subcontractor is not going to stick around long, and B, you're not going to be in business very long, right? So there has to
Right.
be that perfect symbiotic relationship there. So we found that the best type of contractor to work with through this process is somebody who is not great at design but loves to build really cool stuff. They just want opportunities, right? And if you can find companies that just are just so skilled in what they do, but have a hard time, they don't want to sit behind a computer, they just love to build cool stuff, give them opportunities. I take my gifts that God's given our team, which is the visualization part and the management part, and take that off their plate, and they can just come out and do what they love to do. Whether it's
Yeah.
concrete, whether it's pavers, landscaping, pools, roof structures, decks, it doesn't matter. Whatever's in their lane that they love to do, just give them a space to come out and do it. And
Yeah.
that's where the best relationships are fortified because they see the value in the fact that they don't have to do what they like to do. And you see the value because they're not charging you for all those extra things and overhead that they normally would have to in a company that has all of those functions. So again, just some thoughts out there for any companies that are thinking about flipping into either a hybrid model with some design manage, some design build, or all design manage, is to make sure you're finding the right people because they not every contractor is a good fit for your company and vice
Yeah.
versa.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, I'm over here taking notes. I think even in regard to partnerships in all different aspects within the business, finding someone that is more of fits into some of those areas that you don't want to handle as much, right? And
Mhm.
whereas I think a lot of people lean towards trying to find people that are similar to themselves or similar to
Yeah.
what they're used to handling. And I also love the point, Joshua, of a win-win
Mhm.
situation because I think you can always get away with making a situation where you're benefiting more than the other partner or whatever it is in a certain business relationship, but that's not a good long-term
Nope.
solution, right?
Nope.
Aside from the whole ethical component of it, um, and I think, and it's unfortunate how a lot of people in business, I think, don't look at situations like that, and they
Yeah.
try to always find out a way to um, take a shortcut or make a situation where they're the one benefiting most. But I think, and if there's proof to that working, I think looking at your company, Joshua, and the way it's run, not only the way that you work with your specialists and partners externally, but also just internally with your employees, how you do open book management and how you make them feel like they're part of the team. It's creating that win-win relationship, right? And
Yep.
that's
Yep.
why you can only spend that. That's why you only have to spend a couple hours each week or
Yep.
whatever it is, because you've created that environment that just kind of feeds off of, everything. And but I just wanted to mention that because I think it's unfortunate in business. A lot of people don't look at things like that, or don't look at it like that. So
Yeah, if we start flipping the script and thinking outside of revenue and looking more toward relationship, specifically in this conversation around your team members, around your subcontractors, potential partners, and specialists, if you start thinking about relationships versus revenue. Now, revenue is important. We all know that. It's the lifeblood. Cash flow is the lifeblood of a business. We have to have it. We must have it. But at what cost? At the end of the day, what are you morally and ethically willing to give up in order to have that money? Or do you need to do any of that? Do you need to give anything up? Do you need to be going against your own principles and values in order to run a business? And I can stand here and tell you right now, the answer is no, you don't have to go against them. You just have to be aware of them.
yeah,
And if you start feeling something not feeling right inside, like you're taking advantage of somebody, it's because you're rubbing against one of your principles or values inside deep down, whether you're aware of it or not. And that's what's giving you that conflict. So when you can coexist in an environment where both partner and you are winning, you're focused on building a long-term relationship with them, it changes everything. The revenue follows after that. The revenue
yeah,
follows all because then you're both winning and you're both going to be chugging forward. And it's a lot easier to work with a partner that you've worked with for years than it is to constantly keep plugging in the newest, cheapest one and having to deal with all the headaches. That's where a lot of guys get in trouble. They get stuck in that revolving door of the cheapest one because I need to be most competitive. Well, I say BS to that. That's bullshit this time. I say,
yeah,
look, what you need to do is figure out how your company can add more value to the market than anybody else's in your specific specialty. How can your company add more value than anybody else? And that doesn't have to be value in a sense of giving them more for their money physically, like more patio or more square footage for the same money. It's about how do you create an experience for your customer that they're willing to pay more for, even if they're getting the same thing that someone else, company B, could offer them, but they feel like they're getting so much more from you. And that's the entire process of sales is making sure the client is in an environment where they know that they're well taken care of, that they're cared for, that they feel like the only client you have, because you're going to spend less time, more time with less people as opposed to the old model, which is less time with more people because of volume. The problem is that clients don't feel you at that point. I know that might sound
yeah,
crazy to you guys out there, but clients, believe it or not, they can feel your presence. They can, especially the females, they're very much more receptive on this. And they can sense whether you're in this to win this with them or you're just in it for a check. Can they fog a mirror and write a check that's good enough for you? That's not a very high bar to working or finding the right person to work with. So you
yeah,
really have to ask yourself as an owner, like, all right, who's my perfect client avatar? Who do I love to serve? Who can I serve best? And how can I do that in a way that I add the most value to the market and to my customer? And that become your center of everything, not how much revenue can you make, because revenue will follow that value.
yeah. Absolutely, Josh. And I think an underestimated aspect of just creating what you've built as well, and along the same lines of a lot of these topics is the communication aspect of it, and the soft skills, both internally speaking with some of the specialists and partners and internal employees. Um, but then also, I'd like to get some of your thoughts on just the communication skills in general and how to apply that to actually closing on some of the jobs. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. But I guess what are your thoughts on that, Joshua?
Well, I definitely want to get into that but for a second, I want to sidebar. When
Yeah,
it comes to leadership, as we're leading our companies, leading our teams, leading our families, leading people around us, leadership can be defined in many ways, but I like to define it with one simple word. It's influence. If you're a leader, it's because you can influence people. And not well, I guess it could be used in many ways, like manipulation and all of that. It could be used in a very bad way, but it also can be used in a much better way all the way around, right? So when it
absolutely.
when it comes to sales, it's so often people that come to me and are like, "Hey, I want to learn how to sell. I want to learn how to communicate." And I said, "Why? What's your definition of success? Why do you want to do this? What's up with this?" And they're like, "Well, I want to learn how to sell and make more money." I'm like, "I get that." And it's like, and I understand that want, that need, that desire. But I also want to know then, what will that look like if you're a better communicator after work? When you go home to your family and you can communicate, have more awareness of your own actions, your own personality, your own emotions, if you have more awareness. Because if you want to be a great salesperson and go out there and actually serve people, you're gonna have to be super aware of yourself. And I know I wasn't for most of my life. It's only for the last maybe 5 years that I become super aware. But it's been so much of my life I lived kind of with my eyes closed when it comes to emotional awareness. And if we don't stay on our surfboard, right? If we don't keep ourselves balanced throughout this, when a client says something or throws an objection, that could throw our emotions off. And then once we go into a tizzy, then the whole thing's over, right? That transfers home, that transfers into your teams, that transfers all over the place. So much of communication isn't just selling for more work or more revenue. It's about understanding yourself, how you show up. When you come to the door and you knock on it and Mrs. Jones opens the door, is the first thing you think of, it's great. She can write me a check. Or is it, I really want to get to know Mr. and Mrs. Jones so I can figure out the best solution to their project or the best solution to their problem. But first, I need to define what that problem is. I can't just assume I understand what it is, right? I'm like, oh, they just need a patio. Sure. Here's 5 different patio packages. Pick one that fits what you think you'll need. And next thing you know, they pick package B and you install it and they walk out onto it like, yeah, it looks nice, but my furniture doesn't fit. It's not big enough for what I thought it was going to be. In the picture, it looked better. And pretty soon, the solution you offered was not a solution to the problem they had. Right. And then you wonder why you're not getting your referrals. Like our goal here, a whole target is to create relationships with our customers, deep relationships for the win-win scenario. If they get the result they want, and then they tell all their friends about it. So we get the result that we want, which is consistent business, a pipeline of new leads that are already warmed up and ready to go. So, but you need to give first as a sales professional, as a business owner, you need to give more than they could ever expect so that they can reciprocate that reciprocity of giving you those referrals and talking about you at work and at the gym and when they're out to dinner with their friends. Like that is a gift that comes from giving them more than they expect, more than their expectations expect, and over delivering on that. So, and it's not about taking whatever profits you had in the project and reinvesting them back in your client by buying them fancy gifts all the time. It's about really understanding what they need, want, and desire, and being able to ask the right questions in the right order to get to that gold. And once you're in that whole cavern of gold, you're like, okay, I know exactly what we need to do now. Provide a solution through a design, adjust it as need be, and then build their dream. But we can't expect our clients to know off of a few, different patio packages which one is going to best suit them. It just people aren't aware enough of their problem in order to know that. We need to be able to unpack that with them, hold their hand, and show them the way. Be the guides, not the hero.
Yeah. No, that's phenomenal stuff. And how, what was your what was that time, Joshua, where a lot of this stuff started to kind of click for you? Because
Yeah,
I'm sure that things weren't always like this,
they
as you
were
started
not.
your company.
Yeah, they were certainly not like that. I was like anybody else out there. I was just thinking, like, man, I got bills to pay. I got people with checkbooks. How do I take it from their checkbook to my bank account so I can pay bills and hopefully have enough money left over? Like, that was the only, but that's where I was. I was in survival mode, dude. I was running my company on survival mode. And the shift happened for me when I started to ponder this question. I started to ponder, okay, if I want to grow my business, I need to spend more on marketing. Okay, this is not the question yet. So I started thinking about this. If I want to spend more money on marketing, then I can hopefully be able to sell more business and be able to make more money. And I said, but wait a minute here. What if it's possible? I read it somewhere. I don't remember where I read it, but like, well, what if it's possible if I could just serve more of the clients that are coming in my door? Because my close rate was dismal back then, man. I would probably, out of 10 clients, I'd probably close 3 or 4, maybe 5 on a good week. Like
Yeah.
it, so I'm sitting here thinking, like, well, that's good. That's what everyone else tells me they close. Like, it's not that big a deal. And I started to ask a bigger question. Here's the question: what would happen if I could close 7, 8, or more of those 10? Without having to spend a dollar more in advertising? What if I just had the skills to be able to communicate with customers in a way that I could better serve higher amounts of those same ones instead of thinking I've got to go through? Because think about all the time that's wasted that I was wasting going out and seeing all these jobs that I wasn't getting. If my average was just say 4 to be as nice as possible to myself here, that means 6 of them, possibly 6 to 10 to 12 hours a week was done, like shot in the ass. No, I couldn't do anything with it. And I'm like, I wonder why I don't have time. So what if I could be focusing my attention on fewer people, staying there with them, going deeper, longer, and building a relationship, not just a revenue stream? How would that look? And that's when I started training in sales. I started training in all that stuff. I kind of learned how to communicate because I was the fly in the wall. I was a quiet guy. I was the guy that thought I had to be the hero coming out to site and tell them everything and amazing stuff that we do and all that and just get excited for them and all that. And they just looked at me and they're like, yeah, that guy didn't ask me any questions. He just talked the whole time and he thought he sold the project, but I don't feel like he even understands or cares. He just wanted to talk about himself and how great he is and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, what happened is that was a huge reality shift. When I asked that question, I started to train and I started to find that, man, I'm talking way too much. I'm talking like 80% of the time. The client gets to talk like 20% of the time. And I'm like, but isn't that what they're hiring us for? The show? Like they want us to come out and save the day, right? That's our entire goal is to save the day. They're hiring us to put on. And I was like, no, it's actually the opposite. And this is where it all shifted for me, Joe. When I started realizing it was that I'm like, so the clients are supposed to speak 80% of the time and I'm only supposed to speak 20? I'm like, first of all, that sounds awesome, right? Speak less, make more. I like this. This is good. And build a deeper relationship in the process. The clients feel like you care. They actually can sense that you're out there to help them and to serve them and not just, make money for your company. That's when it all shifted. And within a year, Joe, no lie, within a year of training, we were able to double revenue in 1 year. Double revenue. I didn't spend a dollar more on advertising. And I was like, whoa, like, holy moly, this is possible. This guy from the cornfields of Pennsylvania can figure it out. I'm like, it's not that difficult. I was like, okay, let's try this. And I started to train some other people around the country, and they were getting similar results with the process that we developed. And I was like, wow, okay, there's something here. I want to help people in our industry. I want to help them go from that 3 to 4 out of 10 close rate up to 75% or higher because that's what we do consistently. And I know others that do it too. And they do it because they slow things down, they talk, or they're more focused in building relationships instead of just revenue. And that was the real catalyst for me to even start Yes Express and the podcast and all that. Cause I'm like, man, I know what that feels like to go out there and constantly be defeated, to show your best work and to not be called back and to be, then you set up follow-ups. And the next thing you know, the client doesn't call you back and you're like, what the heck? And then you drive by and see your competitor there building a similar project and you get all pissed off or, it's like, I've been down that road so many times. There has to be a better way that I know how to allocate my time better. So that's that's how we handle with something like that, and that's where our focus is in order to make sure we can serve at a higher level.
Awesome stuff, Joshua. And one of the things we see oftentimes, you were mentioning the close ratio. Sometimes we work with clients that just start with us, or maybe even they're starting to work with field management software, and they're starting to understand their numbers a little bit better, and then
Hmm.
they realize, oh wow, I actually need to price my jobs 20% higher.
Hmm.
But how am I supposed to do that
Yep.
while also maintaining or even increasing my close ratio?
Hmm.
Um, so it's definitely, and even your point, Joshua, in regard to kind of doing more with the amount of leads that you have versus trying to get more leads. And I think you can, like companies, and curious to hear your thoughts on this too, especially as companies start out, I think a lot of people focus too much on volume. How can I do more? How can I, get
Hmm.
more clients? How can I get more employees? And then it's kind of like a shift typically happens where it's, oh wow, maybe I need to really focus on making sure that I'm getting the right kind of jobs. Maybe I need to focus on making sure that, like what you're saying, optimizing the sales approach or
Hmm.
making sure that I'm getting the right kind of equipment, right? Um, I guess do you see stuff like that within the industry and people that kind of get that light bulb moment with that?
I do. Yeah, I do see that. A lot of guys that come into class, they're thinking, I just need to figure out how to sell more. And then when I tell them, look, how about if you sold less but at higher price, right? And you
Yeah.
said, 20% increase to do it right in your numbers. As soon as they get tied into Wes over at Synced Up and they start looking at it, and they're like, oh boy, I need to increase my prices. How am I going to do that in my market? I can barely sell now. And I'd like to, any listener out there that's thinking that right now, I'd like to say the only difference between what you're charging today and that 20 or 30 or 50% increase is your mindset. If you don't believe you're worth it, your customers aren't going to believe it either. It's very, very simple. It's between the 6 inches of real estate in your head. That's your biggest battleground. Because customers, believe it or not, want to pay premium. Most do. I'm not going to say everybody does, but most companies or most customers want to pay premium for a premium service. That's what they want. Deep down, it's what they want. But at the same time, they're also being very cost conscious because their parents told them to get 3 bids for everything. So they're doing their due diligence and being responsible, so good stewards of their money. But I'll tell you right now, if you can value stack, that's one of the topics that we talk about in our classes is value stacking, how to create your company, how to lay it out so your customer can feel and understand and know that you're a higher value than any way they've talked to before, and that you can demonstrate that. It's not about telling them I'm the best. They don't give a shit about that. The reality is they're going to see right through that. But when you demonstrate it to them through a value stack process, next thing you know, they're like, holy moly, like this company, they do exactly what I need, because you know your customer really well. They do exactly what I need. And I know they're going to be the best solution for me, because what a client wants more than anything, Joe, is to go from a world of uncertainty, I don't know what's coming next, to a world of certainty. I know exactly what's going to happen next. Clients will pay for more for certainty versus uncertainty. So if you're the kind of contractor out there that's listening, that's like, yeah, I tell my client it's going to be about X to Y price wise, and I can get there in a couple of weeks, you're leaving a ton of uncertainty on the plate. Customers are like, oh boy, okay, I guess he's kind of X to Y, rough pricing and rough time frames. There's a lot of risk in that. You know, we've got a lot of money on the table, whether it's a $5,000 project or a $500,000 project. If there's a lot of wiggliness in there, that's a lot of uncertainty. And uncertainty kills deals. Certainty pushes deals forward. So when you say, okay, how can I become the most certain salesperson when it comes to my systems, my process, my offering to my customers, the way we interact together, so they can feel the certainty in me, that confidence, right? Because people buy confidence. They love when they know somebody they're working with is confident in what they're doing. They'll pay more for that. Now, the only way you get confidence is with clarity. So first, as owners, we need to be extremely clear on what we're really good at and what we're not good at. We need to be very clear on what our system and process is for each and every communication with every single client. If we have a system in place for communication, let's just call it sales for now. If we have a sales system in place that we manage and work each and every time that we talk to a customer, we don't leave anything out. We don't have to be thinking, oh crap, it's Friday, I'm burnt out from the week. It's been a hard, hot week. I just want to, to be the weekend, and you start skipping over parts of your sales process. You can't do that, right? Once you have a process in place and you know that it works, the next thing you do is you're going to gain a lot of clarity that it's going to be like, okay, I got the right path. So with that clarity comes confidence. You deliver it much more confidently. Like when it comes to the different parts, the different tools within the sales process, when you know exactly how to deliver each one of those, you're confident as heck.
Yeah.
And that comes through because you're not guessing like, okay, you're not stuck in your head thinking like, what am I going to ask them next? I'm not sure what the best question is if I ask them next this, what will they do? Like you're in your head the whole time and you're
Yeah.
back to hearing their words, but you're not listening.
Yeah.
Right. And next thing you know, they then say something and you ask a question that's completely off board or go in a completely different direction because you were stuck in your head, not in your heart where you're supposed to be, but in your head. And the next thing you know, the customer's like, what is he talking about? That's not even what I asked him. Or he didn't even listen to anything I just got done saying. They can feel that too. So it's if you know your sales process in and out, you know how you work with customers, you have questions, we like to call it questions chambered, like a boxer ready to go. Like you already have the next one ready, you know where you're going to exactly where you're going to take this. Confidence exudes from that kind of a communicational relationship. But if you don't, and you're squirreling around your head thinking about what's that one magic line I can say right now, they're going to open their checkbook up and they're going to write me a check. Your customers feel that, man. That's why you're getting busted. That's why you're out there, barely getting 3 or 4 leads out of 10, signing projects that way because they feel that. So it's when you have a system, you become more confident. That clarity gives you confidence, and then confidence moves mountains.
Yeah. No, that's great stuff, Joshua. And I know we spoke a little bit briefly before we went live here, but I think it's a lot of times people try to get a lot into the weeds of and the granularities of some of the numbers and some of those things. But a lot of times I think just having the right mindset and the confidence can really, really help to improve some of the margins, some of the close ratios. So and because this is the Green Industry Profits podcast,
Mhm.
have to ask this question here, Joshua. As for numbers and different metrics, um, any favorite metrics that you like to track, or just kind of as you're analyzing the company or their financials, at all?
Yeah, for me, my philosophy is this. If we can bring in great work in the front side of the business, the money figures itself out on the back side, as long as we're not
Sure.
overspending or being
Yeah.
stupid with overhead or whatever. But in general, no money in the front, no result in the back, right? So if you can't communicate, don't build relationships, can't sell, then I don't care what you're doing in the back end, it's going to suck. So everything
Yeah.
for me is front end, right? So it's like, okay, good. So if it's front end, that means we're looking at how many leads are we getting in? So this is a
Sure.
metric that I watch quite closely. Is how many leads are coming in, how many projects are closing, and how many referrals are we getting? We call it the LSR, right? We're
Okay.
looking for that triangle. And if we're find out that we have a problem from lead to sale, then we have ourselves a communication slash experience problem. The client somewhere between the beginning of, hey, hi, I'm a lead, and yes, I want to buy something from you. Something happened. So either the lead isn't great quality, and if it isn't, you got to fix that. But if it is a good quality lead and you can't close them, there's something missing in there. And most likely it's a value proposition that they're not feeling, or you don't understand them well enough. And you need to do your research, market research about what they truly need, want, and desire. Who is your perfect client avatar? What do they do for a living? Are they in healthcare? Are they entrepreneurs? Are they in finance? Are they pumping gas at a 7-Eleven? I mean, like, it doesn't matter. The point is, if you know who they are, then you can speak to that group in the way they want to be spoken to, right? So we have to understand that you don't have to be the Swiss Army knife to every single lead and get them. Some clients just aren't good fits for your company, and that's okay. Your sales process should kick them out through a pre-qualification process. You should know that pretty quick. If you don't know that within the first one or two phone calls, then you're going to waste a lot of time. You need to have that. You need to be downright dangerous qualifying your clients so you can spend time in the right buckets. So again, if we're going from lead to sale and we get that fixed, say you're 8 or 9 out of 10, that'd be great. And then you go from sale to referral and you think, okay, well, how do I get more referrals? Because if that truly is the engine of the business, is those referrals coming in left and right. And if you're thinking I can sell them, but I'm just not getting anybody to talk about us afterward, how do we solve that problem? Again, this is what owners do. Once you can step back from your business far enough, you can start seeing these things from a 35,000-foot view and not stuck in the trenches putting fires out all day long. You can start seeing these things and actually grow your company past that $1 million mark. But that takes systems and processes to get yourself there so you can release some of that time. You're not wasting time chasing other leads that aren't going to go anywhere. You can actually put it back into your business and start thinking like this, right? So it's like, all right, if the referral machine isn't working right, then what do we need to do? Well, if a customer buys from you but won't refer you, then there's a pretty simple problem. They feel like they spent more than they got, right? And if they spent more, your sale, than they received at the end, they're never going to refer you. So how do we make sure that they always feel like, and obviously get more than they ever thought they were going to get? Because that's where reciprocity kicks in. That's where they're like, wow, I spent 30,000 on this spot on this backyard, or I spent 130,000, whatever it might be, fill in the blank. And I feel like I got a lot more value than that, not just because of what I see,
Yeah.
but because of how I felt through this entire process, how they listened, how they communicated, how they held my hand the entire time, because most clients have only ever done an outdoor space once or twice in a lifetime. So we have to understand that's their point of view. That's their point of reference. The POR is, I've only done this once or twice. So I need somebody to hold my hand. We do it every day. We're like inside of the bottle. They're inside the bottle trying to read the label. We're outside looking at it like, why don't they get this? There's no way they
Yeah.
possibly could. So we have to be gentle, take their hands, walk them through the process. And at the end, if they feel like they've got so much more value from interacting with your company, not just what they see and what they get at the end, but how you've made them feel the entire time. Now all of a sudden, a referral is easy. Reviews are easy because clients feel like they owe it to you to do it. Now, I'm not talking every single one because you know what? Some people aren't going to be happy. I don't care what you do to them, or what you do with them, or what you give them at the end. But the majority feel that. And then you have that other side of that triangle. Then that's referral back to lead. And that's what it is, right back to the top. And then you're like, oh, we got a warm lead this time through the sale over to referral. And you just keep that system going. And you don't have to do a ton of advertising once you got that machine running, but you will have to do a ton of time spent and awareness and thinking about how you can gift them just little gifts that are super personalized, not stupid coffee cups with your name on them. Nobody cares about those things, but give them something that's not a piece of paraphernalia from your company and is more of something that really resonates with them, to gift them in ways that they can never expect, and just do things that they never expected. And next thing you know, your value goes through the roof and you're telling all their friends about it. And next thing you know, you're right back in that cycle of warm lead, sale, referral, warm lead, sale, referral. And that's the KPI that I'm always watching, because once it comes in and we're selling and we've got that machine running, then we can screw up a lot of stuff on the back end. As long as we got money coming in the front to correct it, we can screw a lot up in the back end. But when you have nothing coming in the front side, the back end can do all at once. It's not going to get anywhere. Just going to sit there and wait.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And and how do you track all of that, like the total leads, referrals, and all that? Is it a lot of manual tracking on that side of things?
It can be. We have a CRM that we've developed. We've tried all the ones out there in the market, and we just didn't find anything that fit our company. So we had one personally developed, and that is the one that runs everything in the company. And we can track a lot of that stuff. It's not like like a report. We actually keep track of everything coming in, where they heard of, because every single lead that comes in is asked simple questions in our pre-interview. And that's all about like, where did they hear about us? Well, we Googled you. Well, what did you Google? What was you remember the keywords that you were Googling? Like all the way down to that kind of detail. And then we keep track of all that and we start looking for patterns. And I say, okay, well, we got patterns here. Everyone's looking for, let's just say, landscaping in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Then you're like, okay, if that's the case, and I see a bunch, maybe we should do something with that. Maybe we need to have a little bit more. That's a clue, right? We're detectives. That's a clue. Let's
Sure.
see if we can add value in that market more and see if we can get more of those clients, because they keep saying yes to us. So why don't we want to go where they are, birds of a feather, and bring more of them in? So, you can't do that if you're slam busy, majoring in minor things, trying to be everything to everybody, getting stuck being a yes man or woman, constantly putting fires out. Your mind can't possibly expand to that. That's you're too close to the fire. You need to get a team in place and move your way back out a little bit more so you can start working on the business, not just in it.
That's all phenomenal stuff, Joshua. And before we wrap up, any other things you'd like to leave the community with?
Oh goodness. I know we don't got a lot of time, so I'm not going to go too deep into a lot of stuff. But in general, if you're listening out there and you're like, man, like I'm resonating a lot with this stuff, all I got to tell you is there's hope. This isn't a death sentence. This isn't a life sentence when it comes to owning a business. Oftentimes we'll get stuck in this circle of owning your job. I was there for the longest time. I owned my job. Like, I'm a business owner, walking around pounding my chest, driving new trucks, doing all that kind of stuff. And you know, what I realized is that none of that really matters at the end of the day, right? It's how much value can you possibly give to others? How can you serve them at a higher level? And I'll leave you guys with this thought. If you're out there chasing, if you're out there chasing, trying to be better than your competition, if you will, other companies in your market, constantly trying to be better than, watching them, figuring out what they're doing so you can try to one up them, you're wasting your time. The only thing you need to be focused on, listeners, the only thing you need to be focused on is, how can I be better than I was yesterday? Right? Just two
Yes.
millimeter shifts a day accumulate like snow into massive piles. But you got to start focusing not on other people and how because you will never be what they are. You don't have their stories. You don't have their challenges. You don't have their triumphs. You don't have their stories. You don't have any of that stuff. So if you focus on how others are doing and wasting your time in life thinking about, I need to be better than XYZ landscaping company or better than this guy, you will always be in a hole because you're behind them, right? So what we need to be doing is thinking, looking forward. How can I be better than I was yesterday in what I do, whatever it is, whether it's service or growth or sales or whatever it might be, business? How can I get better, just one step better, 2 millimeters better tomorrow? How can I get 2 millimeters better the next day? And if you start on that track and on that discipline and stop looking at your competitors and thinking like, man, like I'm just going to try to figure out how to outsmart them, you never will. You aren't them. So if you focus on competing just with yourself and not with other people, it changes the game. There's an adage that says, comparison, in this case, competition, but comparison, comparing yourself to others is the thief of joy. And it is absolutely true. Once you start competing on the level where you're just getting better yourself each and every day by reading books, by going to classes, by paying for education in some way, you will grow and grow and grow. And eventually you look back and you'll be like, holy moly, you do 2 millimeters a day for 365 days. You got a lot of expansion right there. And that's all yours. That's evergreen. That's there forever. But if you're chasing somebody else's success, you're going to end up in the wrong side.
Absolutely, Joshua. And what's the best way people can reach out to you if they have any questions?
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, they can jump on any podcast platform. You can go to Sales Made Simple podcast. We talk a lot about things in the sales realm, if you will, all kinds of different tools and tricks and thoughts and philosophies and mindsets and all that kind of stuff. And it's the Sales Made Simple podcast is dedicated to landscapers, hardscapers, and outdoor living pros. We're not trying to sell to every single, company out there. That's not our goal. I've been in this business now and in this industry for 30 years. I love it, and I want to be able to help our brothers and sisters um, to go from a survival mindset to a thriving mindset. And the only thing they got to do is shift the 6 inches of real estate between their ears. They have all the capacities to do it. And I know that for sure because I get to see it each and every week in our classes. So go to the Sales Made Simple podcast. That's your best bet. You can take a listen there. And if that gets you excited, you can go over to our website, yes.express, and take a look at what we're doing there. And hopefully we can help you.
Awesome stuff, Joshua. And listen, thanks again for taking the time here. A lot of golden nuggets here. And yeah, have a great rest of your day, all right?
I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you.